All right, Joel Gausten here from joelgausten.com. For my subscribers and viewers who enjoy the videos I do, focusing on the history of New Jersey underground music, I'm about to give you what I'm sure is going to be a great video in that series. I'm joined by somebody who I came up listening to. One of my favorite bands from the early 90s was a group called Godspeed. Put out one of the most incendiary goddamn albums of that decade. So I'm looking forward to getting into that and a whole bunch of other stuff with my guest. Please welcome Tommy Southard. How you doing, man?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Thanks for having
Excellent.
me.
Oh yeah, man. Thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. Been really into your stuff for a long time, so I'm excited to kind of connect with you and get into the whole history of things. You got a lot of bands, man.
I've been around for a minute, so you know,
Yeah,
the longer you're around, you hit a couple corners, you know.
right. Definitely, definitely. Well, I first became aware of you late 80s, early 90s. Because at that time, although I was too young to start going to shows, I was reading the EC Rocker. So there was this whole wave of bands coming out from the shore area.
Yep.
There was Godspeed, Nude Swirl, Daisy Cutter, Magnet, of course,
Yeah.
Big Nurse. You know, there's a
Yep.
ton of really cool bands from that era. So, are you originally from Jersey? Are you a Jersey native?
Oh yeah. Born in Tom's River,
All right,
Ocean,
cool.
yeah, Ocean County.
Excellent. When did music and specifically guitar kind of enter your orbit?
I mean, music's always been there. I mean, I don't remember growing up ever not having music in the house. I mean, my mom listened to the radio constantly. She had a stereo and had records, you know what I mean? I mean, obviously back then there was no cable. It was like black and white TV with, little rotary dial for like three channels. So TV wasn't a big part of our growing up, but music's always kind of been there. And then the big catalyst and change for me was I was still in grade school and my uncle came and lived with us and moved up into the attic in our house, and he had a big record collection. And when he was at work or whatever, I'd sneak up into his room and I'd go through all this because my mom had mostly like easy listening. She had a few cool things, but it was mostly like, Charlie Pride or, kind of little bit wasn't rock, where my uncle had, Grand Funk
Hmm.
and Black Sabbath and Hendrix and heavier stuff. And my little brain listening to that was just like, you know, it wasn't stuff that you heard in the the 72 Duster on the AM radio. So I wasn't really exposed to that. So that was like what really kind of set me off. I was just like, what is this rock and roll stuff, And that like made me want to play guitar. I mean, obviously not quite yet there because I was still young, but a few years later, junior high or whatever, I was like, I'm gonna get a guitar. I'm gonna start a band with my friends, and we're gonna play rock and roll. So music's always been there.
So when did you really hit the ground running playing in bands? Would that have been Social Decay or was that something that came a little later?
I had some bands before that, but I would say that was like my first like real band where we actually like played shows. And we before that, I mean, we played some parties and whatnot, whatever, but the bands never lasted. Everybody was kind of branching off into different areas. Dudes were thrashing, dudes were punking, you know. Um, so Social Decay was like dudes I went to high school with, dudes that were like there all the time. We had a place to rehearse, and it was probably the start of kind of taking it serious, and at least like, we're gonna practice every Tuesday at 8 o'clock or whatever. And then it just kind of progressed from there. But that would be
So,
the first real, thing.
right. So timeline wise, I'm guessing like 83, 84. for that?
That's about it. Yep. High school. Yep. Um, Couple kids that I was went to high school with that were just like into punk, listening to the Dead Kennedys at the time. Growing up in like South Jersey, we didn't know really at that time about like the New York hardcore scene or even the North Jersey hardcore scene. Like, we were kind of in our own little weird bubble. So the only punk and hardcore stuff that we knew about at the time was stuff that you read about in like Flipside or Maximum Rock and Roll, or there wasn't a whole lot of like, there were no shows down by us at all. I mean, I think we probably played the first few in 84, 85 down by us. So yeah, we just didn't really know what the hell was going on, but we just started a little punk band and you know got some beers and sit around and listen to GBH and kind of write our own little goofy riffs, man.
Well, what was around that area at that time, venue wise? Was the Brighton Bar happening at
We
that
didn't
point?
even know about the Brighton because we were down in Tom's River in Ocean County, and so probably probably didn't play the Brighton until like 85, 86.
Mm.
Because there was nothing down by us. Like no, I mean there were clubs, but they were like, cover band shit. There was no original rock scene really down there.
Well, I know you guys would eventually make your way up to play CB's because I there are some recordings available of Social Decay live at CBGB's.
Yeah.
So, how did that sort of bridge get built? Because things were kind of desolate where you are, and it's
You're
suddenly,
you're 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 talking so many years ago that I wish I could, put all the pieces together. I don't really remember how we got hooked up. I mean, we started finding out about other bands. There were some other bands that were local to us, like Lethal Aggression, and I think John was like a year or two older than us at the time, and I think he had a little bit more connect in North Jersey. So we started like getting hooked up with like some bands from up there. Um, and we just kind of got in with a few people. And next thing you know, we got a couple gigs at, CBGB, City Gardens,
hmm.
played down in Baltimore, played in Philly, but how it all happened, I mean, I wish I took notes.
Well, one thing I've learned doing these series of videos is, there's the big umbrella that, New Jersey hardcore, that's a big umbrella. And I think in 2025, there's maybe a tendency to say, oh, AOD, Misfits, Social Decay, everybody knew each other, Jersey's not that big of a state.
Yeah,
But the more I've been digging into this, I've realized there really were kind of pockets of scenes
yeah,
throughout the state. Like you had the AOD scene and like the Clifton crowd. And, North Jersey, you had, the remnants of the Misfits. Those guys were kicking around doing different stuff, not even so much musically for a while, but you had like that kind of scene up there. You had the whole headache thing with the Armin and BT, rest in
yeah,
peace. But it wasn't like this big scene where there was like everybody was everybody's other band on the bill. It was kind of
yeah.
like pockets of bands, right? It was
Definitely at first it was like that a lot because, we were lower middle class kids that didn't have a lot of money, and not everyone had a car. There were only a few kids that drove, and getting up north was always kind of like, can we pull up enough money to get gas to go to this show? And, you know, uh, so yeah, there were definitely like little pockets. It did umbrella out later, like in the late 80s, I'd say, where
mm,
people got a lot more connected. But in the beginning, it was definitely, we were in our own bubble at first. We had no clue about anything. We were just, high school kids like hammering out some bar chords for the fun of it.
right, right. Who were some other bands or characters around that time involved in what was happening in your neck of the I was gonna say neck of the woods, but that's more north. But you
Well,
know,
no, believe it or not, like where we grew up, there's nothing but pine trees down here. We were in the pine
right,
barrens, man. We
right, okay.
literally were in the woods. I mean, I'm sure like probably now, like if you Google Maps like my high school, Central Regional High School, it's smack dab in the middle of the fucking Pine Barrens, man. There was nothing going on down there except, dudes in pickup trucks with rebel flags painted on the hoods and shit with like shotgun racks in the back window.
Yeah. I mean, it's a funny thing when Jersey, in Jersey, because for years in the early 2000s, I was spending a lot of time down like Colts Neck and Red Bank. I was dating a young lady down there, and I was playing the Brighton a lot. But for some reason, it's like I always get like the shore in my mind somehow. So that's kind of like where I was going earlier about how Jersey, people have this impression of Jersey even being in it. But like myself being a few years younger than a lot of the guys I've been talking to, I have realized it was a slightly different environment than I may have envisioned before starting doing this thing, how
Right,
it
right.
was sort of separated. But who were some of the other bands and people who were kind of in your bubble, your orbit at that point in time?
It was us, Lethal Aggression, and Hogan's Heroes.
Hogan's Heroes, that's a great band.
Those are the only three bands from like Ocean County area. I mean, and that's pretty much it. There were bands that popped up after that, but those were like at the time we started, like I think LA started right about that time or soon after. And same thing with Hogan's. They were like right there.
Mm.
And we were all kind of, trying to help each other out, get shows and, you know, that kind of shit.
Well, if I remember correctly, because I started reading the EC Rocker around 88-ish, 89. That would have put me at the age where I was able to like go and get a paper and read it.
Right.
Um, and there was quite a lot of ink on a lot of stuff happening, with a lot of bands kind of coming up. Hogan's Heroes being one of them. I remember seeing like a you know, page length article about Hogan's Heroes and Lethal Aggression. They were so social decay would have been kind of winding down at that point, right?
I think we called it quits in 91.
Okay.
So we were in 88, 89. We were still kind of doing our thing.
And I'm all the way up in Sussex County at that point, next to Sparta. So I'm reading about what you guys are doing down there. So would you say, by the late 80s, it became more of a thing where, there was a lot more happening venue-wise and connection-wise in Jersey as opposed to having to go to play CBs to get something happening?
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. By 87, 88, 89, those are like to me like our golden years, you know what I mean? And there was definitely more people involved. We were playing other shows, the Pipeline, the Brighton, City Gardens. You didn't have to go into Manhattan and play, CBGBs. Of course, everyone wanted to, it was like like a little badge when you're like, oh, we got a matinee. We got a matinee. You know, that was like a big thing for us down here in Jersey. We're like knuckleheads from the Pine Barrens, knuckleheads from the Jersey Shore. You know, we're like, oh, we're playing Manhattan. We're playing the big city.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would imagine back then too. I mean, even when I was starting to play CBs in like the mid 90s, or even playing the pipeline earlier than that for me. I played the pipeline when I was 15. But I mean, it was kind of sketchy, right? Like it was even then. I mean, now you go to CB's that area, there's the Bowery Electric place now that Jesse runs. And there's like, Thai places and, freestanding ATMs on the Bowery. And you're like, back then, even in the 90s, it was sketchy. So I can only imagine late 80s, it was still
When
probably a trip for you guys to go up there and deal with all that.
here's a funny story. We when we played CB's the first time, I think it was 86. Our drummer was still in high school, and his name was Joe. His parents drove him to CBGB's. He wasn't allowed to drive with the band. His parents parked out front. He played the set. His parents waited for him, got in the car. He drove away, and we never heard from him again. His parents forbid him to be in the band after they saw what was going on at CBGB's, and he was out. He was not allowed to play with us anymore. Uh, one of like our, 15 drummers we had.
So what kind of led to Social Decay calling it a day at that, because you guys had been around for quite a few years at that point.
Just things got messy. Things got messy with friends, and people started to click off. Um, there were a lot of drugs involved at the time. Um, Weird, violence. It just, for me, I just wanted to get away from it and kind of do something a little different. I was kind of, I mean, I still love hardcore, but I was kind of like over, it was weird. Things were weird. For me, it was weird. Everyone was kind of doing their own thing. It wasn't like the family that it started out as, you know what I mean? It was like dudes over here doing angel dust, dudes over here stealing cars, dudes over here fighting people, dudes over here doing robberies. It was like it got real sketchy and weird, and I was just like, I'm fucking done with this shit, man. I don't want to be in the middle of this bullshit anymore.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to, and I wanted to do something a little differently musically. Um, just kind of like little heavier, little more metalish. Kind of just,
Where does mental abuse fit into this? Is that later or is it around this time? Because I know mental abuse was doing stuff way, way back.
well, mental abuse was definitely around when we first started because we played a bunch of shows with them, 85, 86. One of the shows I actually put on in New Jersey, we had mental abuse headline. Um, we got the cash box got stolen. We did it at a VFW. People broke into the kitchen of the VFW. There was an egg fight. I mean, it got wild, but they were definitely around, prior to us. And, when we started doing stuff, they were one of the bands where like, oh, we can play some shows with mental abuse. You know what I mean?
Right. And you were in mental abuse at one point, correct?
Way later. This was just,
Okay.
yeah, just a few years back. There was like
Oh,
a
okay.
Yeah, just a little resurgence of mental abuse with
When,
with
when when the
Sid.
world found Sid alive.
Yeah, Sid was alive, right? Sid was alive. The rumors were untrue. Sid was alive.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember when that whole thing went down, man. I really wanted to, because I think maybe you were with them, but I think mental abuse played like the Stanhope House
Yeah.
in your, okay.
Yeah, we played there a couple times. Yeah, we played with AF one time and man, I don't remember who else. Maybe AOD. I don't remember. Yeah, I think it was AOD.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah, cool. Yeah, I mean, I love that Streets of Filth record. I mean, talk about a classic of its time.
Listen, it's the best thing out of New Jersey. No, 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 no disrespect to Wacky Hijinks, but it's a top 10 hardcore album for me.
Yeah, yeah. Even some of those like New York hardcore guys cite that record. I was watching a video. A friend of mine, Drew Stone,
Yeah,
does a series, New York Hardcore Chronicles. I co-host it with him sometimes, but he does these like 10 questions with different luminaries from the scene. He had Armand from Sick of It All on,
sure.
talking about like, the class. He's like, oh, Streets of Filth, mental abuse, so that record still holds a lot of weight with people.
Yeah, it's a monster record. Um, it needs to be reissued, but there's all kinds of weird hang-ups going on with that people won't release it.
Yeah, that's a shame. It really does need to get the proper
Yeah,
respect. So you mentioned, musically you want to do something different. That kind of leads into Godspeed, which was really kind of my entry point to your music, what you were doing. And I gotta tell you, man, I was 16 when I heard you guys for the first time. And it was the perfect age for me to listen to that stuff because, you're pissed off and fucked up when you're
sure.
16. It goes with the age.
Yeah,
And I was listening to like Damaged and all those classic, like, here, son, here are the canonical pissed off records you need to listen to. But you guys are like the first band I embraced that are like recurrent, like you were existing in the present for me. I didn't get down to see you because I was too young, but that Ride album, is still like I would say it's a cross between Damaged and Volume 4 for me. You know, one
Nice.
of the strongest records of that time, and just a fucking ugly, angry, beautiful fucking menace of an album, man.
It's in your face, that's for sure.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So let's kind of dive into the Godspeed thing because obviously a heavier band, a more metallic band, and I think what stood out for a lot of people immediately was you had two bass players in the band. So kind of walk me through the early days of Godspeed and how you landed on that sound and sort of utilizing the two bass lineup.
It was purely just out of necessity. Like I wanted a two guitar player band, but we tried out a bunch of dudes and we just couldn't find the right person to fit. There was just something that just wasn't right with all the people that, had tried out for second guitar. Um, and we were playing the Brighton Bar one time, and the guy who was doing sound there, his name was Chris Kosnick. He slipped a tape in my pocket of my flannel, and he was like, "Hey, this is me, man. Check out what I'm doing, man." He's like, "I'd love to jam with you guys." And it was like him and a four track with his bass and him, and he was doing like these distorted vocals and real heavy bass sound. And I was like, God damn, man, this guy's doing cool shit, but he plays bass. We already have a bass player. So we didn't he didn't join the band like right away. We actually did a bunch of shows with him where he would come to the gigs with us. He'd have his amp set up, but we would play our set. And then at the end, we would do like kind of this improv noise jam thing. And then he would strap on a bass and he would play. So it wasn't like he was really in the band, but the more we kind of did that and the more like we were hanging around him, we're just like, fuck it. Why does it got to be another guitar player? Let's just have him play bass. We'll do, Rob played distorted bass. He can do like he had like this synth pedal, so he had more of like a synthy kind of sound, like a little, like kind of spacey thing. We just melded it all together. It wasn't really like we didn't set out originally to be like we're gonna get two bass players and we're gonna, blow people's minds because we don't have two guitars, we have two bass. It just kind of happened organically,
Hmm.
because we wanted to have another guitar player, but we couldn't find them.
Yeah, well, it certainly led to a killer sound that really set the band apart at that time. Was there were I mentioned in the intro, there were tons of great bands at that time. That scene down there was really happening.
Yeah.
Magnet was kind of sailing off, to
Yeah.
big leagues at that point for a bit, but you had like the Daisy Cutters and you know, just an interesting scene out there. Atomic Bitch Wax, I think, was kind of bumbling around the same time as well. So,
Little bit later because Chris
right.
was in Godspeed and then he started the bitch wax after the Godspeed.
Funny enough, the last show I went to right before COVID lockdown was an Atomic Bitch Wax show in Massachusetts, and it was those guys and Weed Eater,
Okay.
the old buzz oven
Yeah,
guy,
sure.
Dixie
Yep.
Dave, who puked on my girlfriend one night many years ago, but that's a whole other thing.
Have you had her tested?
No, 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 no. He didn't swallow anything, man. So hopefully she's all right. But yeah, yeah, Dave's an interesting cat for sure. But after the Bitch Wax show, like, they're hanging out by the merch. I walk over to Chris, I go, Godspeed fucking ruled. And he's like, oh shit. So we got talking about that a little bit, because um you guys had an impact certainly during the time you were a band. I mean, and it really didn't take long for you guys to get somewhere. I think it was just a few months before you got the deal with Atlantic, right? You really
It
weren't.
it happened pretty quick. I mean, we just happened to be playing at the Brighton and an A&R rep from Atlantic was there and seen us. Um, we got a demo deal pretty quick. We went in, cut a I think 4 song demo. A couple weeks later, we were playing showcases in New York for you know the guys, head honchos up there. Yeah, it happened pretty quick, but at that time, I think a lot of those major labels were throwing anything at the wall to see what would stick.
Mm,
After Nirvana broke so big, they were like, "What's going on here? We can make money with this bullshit." You know what I mean? And there was, so we just kind of got caught up into that whole wheel. You know, um, I'm not complaining about it. I wish we could have, sustained it a little bit longer,
mm.
but it was a whirlwind. It was pretty wild.
Yeah, and obviously the album, the Riot album, which to the very best of my knowledge is the sole Godspeed album. There was only
Correct.
one.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
We have a 7 inch we did previous and a few, comp tracks, whatever, but that's it. Yeah.
And Rachel Bolan produced that record. Of course, Rachel Bolan from Skid Row,
Yeah.
who's another guy from that area, you know.
Yeah.
So were you guys tight with Rachel before
Not
the
beforehand. No, not at all. I guess at the time he was looking to branch out, and because they were on Atlantic, they suggested it, and we were like, all right, we're not super Skid Row fans, but let's see what this dude's about. And once we met him, super super cool dude. He's totally into punk. He's totally into like cool shit. He drank good beers. It was like, this guy's fucking cool. Let's have him do our record. Like, it was just like we didn't search him out. Like once again, it kind of like happened,
Mm.
and crazy thing is like I'm I'm still bros with the guy now, we still text, we send goofy fucking memes and stupid shit all the time. We send photos of whatever beer we're drinking and shit. It's pretty cool.
Right on? And so a lot was happening for the band at that point. I remember seeing the video for Houston Street on MTV, and I think you landed on Beavis and Butthead too around that time.
Yep.
Um, and of course, reading the EC Rocker every week, it was, Godspeed, Godspeed, Godspeed. So, like, it seemed like a lot happened. And then suddenly, not too long after that, I'm reading the EC Rocker again. It's like, so and so and so and so from Godspeed have a new band, and I'm like, well, what the fuck happened to Godspeed? So it begs the question, why was the band ultimately a one and done with that sole record?
It's it's super complicated, but there's many weird facets to it. We were disintegrating again. It was like egos, drugs, money problems, all kinds of just rock and roll shit, you
Right.
know, life shit. When it was all we were our drummer quit. He had to go back to work, and he had a little, small kids and a wife, and we tried to, find a couple drummers, and nothing was really working at the time. And then right at that time, one of the bands that we had toured with previously, is a band called Sugartooth from California, they called me up and were like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Not much, man. Godspeed's kind of like peddling water over here, like." And they're like, "We're looking for another guitar player. We just booted our guitar player out. Do you want to come to LA and jam with us?" So I kind of just gave everybody the like sayonara, like piss off, and I moved to California for a year. Didn't quite pan out the way I wanted it to. That's when I came back, and that's you know started my band that I'm currently in, Solace.
Mm. I remember Sugartooth around that time. Sold My Fortune was the big tune
Yeah,
for
yeah, they were on Beavis and Butthead with that too.
right, right. And of course Joey,
Yep, I know to play with
Theo.
Danzig. Yep, he wasn't in the band at the time. He had already left when I was in the band.
Mm.
He was, I think, already jamming with Danzig, and they had this guy Craig, who's now the drummer, and he's been the drummer since then for Ignite.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, so he's been
Yeah.
in Ignite for 25 plus years.
Didn't they have Dusty Watson for a while too?
They did at post.
Yeah.
So in between the first record and the second record is where I was at,
Hmm.
and then Dusty did come in and play on that second record, and they're actually back together now.
Oh,
Sugartooth,
cool.
yeah. Last
Yeah.
I heard a couple months ago, they were like working on new material, or they had a record out, maybe.
Yeah, it seemed to be kind of a weird trend at that time too. You mentioned the labels are just kind of throwing money around. That's when you could do that. That's when labels existed. But a lot of those bands had like one or two records, and then it was like, you know,
Yeah,
done deal, which is unfortunate because a lot of great music came out circa 94. Obviously the one everybody remembers is Nirvana and of course, Stone Temple Pilots, but there's a lot of stuff that came out. And interesting stuff too, like Shudder to Think. Like who would have thought that would be on a major label in 94? So there was some gambling happening, I guess, sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But the Riot album, I think, is still a classic of its era. I really do. And I think it's a classic in Jersey music history. Brutal record. I've been listening to it knowing we were connecting, and I'm like, this fucking record still sounds brutal today. It,
thanks, man.
yeah, man. You could put that record out today and sound like a 2025 band to me. It's got a lot of it's got a lot of juice behind it. Um, and there, if I'm correct, there have been Godspeed reunions here and there.
We've gotten together, I mean, a couple times throughout, the last, 10 years, 20 years, whatever. We were actually maybe 10 years ago, we got together. We did like three shows. We were thinking about like actually maybe trying to record and doing some stuff. And once again, it just exploded, like three shows. And the next thing we know, it's just like this guy doesn't want to talk to this guy. This guy's doing his thing over here. It blew up,
Yeah,
which
I
is fine by me. You know what I mean? Like, listen, I- I'm not one to super live in the past. Like, I love all the shit that I've done. I've had so much fun doing, Social Decay, the Godspeed. Even when I was in LA, and Sugartooth didn't really, amount to anything for me. But move forward, man. March, kind of march on. It's just let's do something else. Let's kind of. I'm not gonna get stuck on that.
yeah, I definitely want to get into Solace. But I think there were a couple of like mini chapters prior to that. There's
Sure.
Slaprocket,
Sure.
which I think was immediately after LA, right? When you came
Yeah.
back to New
Yeah.
Jersey.
Yep. Yep.
And
Well, I was actually, so when shit was falling apart out there for me, um, I got a call from Keith Ackerman,
mm,
and he's like, "Hey, I got Shane M. Green from Nude Swirl, and me and Chris are jamming with him. Like, what's up with you?" And I was like, "I think I'm coming back to Jersey." So they were like, "Okay, well, get your ass out here." So I was like, "Okay, fuck Sugartooth. I'm gonna go back to Jersey, back home, start this band with these guys. Shane is a monster guitar player, monster singer. I know Chris, what he can do. He's a phenomenal bass player. Keith Ackerman's a phenomenal drummer. I was like, okay, we're gonna put this shit together. We're gonna do this. You know what I mean? It started off like gangbusters. We played a bunch of killer shows. We made some tapes. We had some deals. Megaforce came down and we're looking at us. All this stuff was kind of, everything seemed to be in place. And for whatever reason, things again, the wheels fell off, the bus. And at the time, when things started getting a little shaky with that, Chris and Keith started jamming with Ed from Magnet, and then that's when they started the bitch wax, and
mm.
then New Swirl, I mean, Slaprocket kind of like really started getting pushed, you know, behind because Chris and Keith were like, well, we got Ed and we're playing bitch wax, so fuck the Slaprocket shit. So
Mm.
that's when I started Solace because they were doing the bitch wax, and then I was like, well, I'll do my own thing.
You and Rachel had a band for a bit there too, right? Is it Prunella Scales? Am I pronouncing that correctly?
You did your homework.
I was kind of in the moment too, if
Yeah.
you're
No,
honest.
no, yeah, yeah. We did a record. We did some tours for a hot minute. I guess when things were like a little cold at the end of Skid Row with Sebastian and all that. He put together this band with me, the drummer from Saigon Kick, and
Phil, yeah.
yeah, Phil, and Elwood Francis, who is now the bass player for fucking ZZ Top. So
Wait,
he quit Prunella Scales for our US tour because he had gotten a gig working for ZZ Top as Billy Gibbons guitar tech.
hmm,
So he was making good money, whatever, whatever. So he's like, look, I want to play with you guys, but I got this gig, you know. So he left to do that. And of course, it paid dividends in the end because he's been with them ever since. And now he's the goddamn bass player for
right.
ZZ Top. So God bless you, Elwood.
Yeah, right on, right on. And from what I can tell, Solace was really the because you're talking about bands, they have like their minute, and then whether it's personality or gigs, people got to pay rent. This is what they're doing. They got the band breaks up. Solace has really kind of been your thing for a good 30 years now, right? More or
It,
less.
yeah, it's pretty much, yeah, on and off, you know. I mean, I raised kids, you know, the band hasn't been active in that whole entire time.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, since '96, it's been pretty much my only band.
And how many guys in the band today were there from day one? Are you the sole remaining?
Me, I'm too stupid to quit. I just keep finding guys that'll put up with me for
And
a
I
little while anyway.
I know just like in the last few years, there's been a lot happening. I know you did an album in 2020, I believe, and
2019. And COVID derailed us.
right.
We had a bunch of shit lined up. We had just put out our record. Excuse me. We were working on a European tour, and then you know clubs can't have gigs. You know, it just set us back. You know,
How
it,
how are things looking for you now that a lot
we just got back from a little tour. We just went we just did a little southwestern swing out to Las Vegas.
Mhm.
Um, we're working on some new stuff. You know, got all these new tunes, new riffs. So hopefully 2025 new record.
Excellent.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you deserve a smoother ride, man. I've bumped into a few of the characters in your past bands over the years, I'll put it that way. And good to see you didn't just throw in a towel and go, this is too much.
Listen, it's in my blood, you know. I mean, what else am I gonna do? Go play golf or something, you know, like playing guitar, you know, kicking out the jams, man.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you just got back from a run. You said you did some gigs. How was Vegas, and what was the touring experience like for you as far as what you're seeing out there with different scenes and what's available for bands touring at that level at this point? Because we're past COVID a little bit now, actually quite a bit. How are things looking for you from your
Well,
perspective?
it was the first time we've been on the road in quite a long time, you know what I mean? I mean, for us, for me, you know, cramming six guys in a cargo van that are all like 55 and over, 55 and over was it was fun, but you know, it was daunting at times, but it was, you know, we were glad to do it. You know, we had a great time. I mean, all the gigs were awesome. I mean, people are still coming out to heavy rock shows. So You know, it was fun.
Great, great. Um, we can't have a conversation like this covering this kind of span of time without circling back to a key character. You and I have chatted about him a little bit recently, Jack O'Monahan,
The
and
best.
specifically, the scene at the Brighton. Rest in peace, Brighton Bar. But he was just one of those pillars, man, like the mainstay guys of this whole thing.
Yeah.
Um, I know, Jack makes an appearance on that Godspeed record. Classic appearance,
We had to do it, man. We had we
I
had to do
remember the first time I heard that, I'm like hearing his voice, and I'm like, I think I've heard this before.
it.
I had a Dirge record around the same time. I'm like, oh, okay. Um, but yeah, I mean, obviously he's somebody who I definitely want to get, mention as much as possible on this channel because I had Phil Cavano on last year from Magnet.
Yeah.
We talked a bit about Jack, but
Don't forget
for the
Blitzbeer.
what's that?
And don't forget Blitzbeer.
No, I didn't. I'll send you a link to that interview because we go deep into Blitzbeer, man.
Nice, nice.
Blitzbeer was one of my favorite bands at that time. I was listening to a lot of college radio at that time, and when the live record came out, Blitzbeer Live, the one they did at the Limelight,
Yeah.
played out all the time. So I was hearing all that stuff, and again, they kind of fall into this history too. But Jack, man, for those who are kind of new to the phenomenon that is Jack O'Monahan, man. How would you describe, his impact on not just Godspeed, but yeah, I'd imagine Social Decay as well.
Well, he's at the center. He's at the center of it all for a lot of us. You know what I mean? I mean, it's like the Brighton Bar was our home base. You know what I mean? And Jack was the coach. You know, he
Mhm.
was the guy. He was the leader. You know, he was booking all the shows. He got all of us. You know, all of our. Well, I don't know about all of us, but he definitely helped get people's foot in the door. You know, he got us places to play. Like I said, when we started Social Decay in South Jersey, there was no place to play. If you didn't play like a house party or someone's kegger, there was nothing going on down there. You had to rent a VFW hall or a firehouse or something, to put a show on. Um, but Jack kind of had like a little mini scene already kind of going, and then he just started, taking all these bands from all over the place, and I wouldn't know half the people that I know in life right now if it wasn't for Jack and the Brighton. I mean, there's so many people that I've played with, other bands that I'm still tight with,
Yeah.
still are my friends, and all because, the Brighton was, like I said, like our home base, and Jack was the stalwart of all of that. He was like the pillar, like you said, he was the guy.
And always treated me well. I started going down there a lot when I was in college. I'd started a band with some people down there called the Graveyard School, and they're
Yep,
still around. I
yep.
started that band, I named it, was with them for the first couple of years, and then went on to do some other stuff. But they're down there, so Seabright area and stuff. So we were always more centralized kind of down there. And we did a bunch of shows for Jack. He always put us on with the Mad Daddies, who were
You can't complain about that.
oh, no, no, no. What I
All
was
right,
gonna say, when I was
R.I.P. R.I.P. Stinky.
yeah, let me tell you about Freddie, man. They were the coolest band I think we played with when I was with the Graveyard School. I remember the first time we played with them, um, Freddie watched our set, which was cool. And then after the set, he walked over, he bought a t-shirt. Had we known he bought it, we would have just given him one, right? Bought a shirt, wore it during his set.
Nice.
I mean, come on. Talk about a warm welcome from another band. You know what I mean?
It's awesome.
So we were always psyched to play with those guys. And yeah, I'm sad that he's not here because he was always a lot of fun, those guys. I'm gonna try to get some Mad Daddies on here at some point, you know.
Yeah, Mad Daddies and the Wretched Ones, man, were always like those two bands. Whenever they were playing, like
Yep.
they were just the most fun, the drunkest, like funnest, good time, you know, sing along type, rock and roll bands, man. They were two of my faves from that era, that scene.
Yeah, yeah, I was in a band that was on Headache for a couple of years, so we got to know all those guys. And I had BT on for a three-part interview last year, right before we passed. It was like 3 months before we passed away. But we went through the whole history of, Headache and the burn and all that stuff. So I'm so grateful he came on the channel and, had those conversations.
Yeah, we tried to get them reunited to play my wedding, but BT was just like, we're retired, man. They just wouldn't do it.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I saw a couple of those guys, Bob and Armin at, BT service, probably a way to see somebody after a long time, but
Sure.
nice as well to know they're still out there doing it, or in the world.
Yeah.
A lot of memories attached to those people. Yeah, Jack was definitely, I don't remember. Look, we all have stories about shitty promoters and lousy shows and bands treated like you're an inconvenience for being there. You're bringing people to the bar, but you're giving, they don't want you there. It was never like that with Jack.
No.
He was always cool, always took care of us, always put us on really good shows too. Like I said, with the Mad Daddies, like always spot on. So I'm happy to hear he's, hanging in there and doing okay, because there was a block of time there where he kind of dropped off and you'd hear things and, you know, I'm
No,
glad.
he's hanging in. I'm due a phone call. I was actually on the phone with him right before we left for tour, and my a son of one of my sons came over, and I had to cut the call short. And I was like, "I'll give you a call," and I haven't gotten back to him, but yeah, I need to give him a buzz. But yeah, he's hanging in there. He's kind of doing his thing up North Jersey. Um, but yeah, I need to get in touch with him again.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and the door's always open to Jack to come on. I know we've been having some chats about possibly working that out.
Listen, I'm sure he would love to, but when I tell you like he's computer illiterate, I'm telling you I don't think he even has a computer.
I'll we'll work it out. We'll
Yeah.
we'll get it sorted
It would
out.
it would probably have to be like seriously like a phone thing and micro cassettes.
Hey, I don't mind. You know what? I prefer doing it that way anyway. So if I got to go back to doing that, that's fine with me, man. I'm barely hanging on with this stuff.
Yeah. Well, like I said, my wife set up this Zoom stuff for me because otherwise I would have been like, I don't know what's happening here.
Yeah, it's a different world moving faster, man. I miss the old days, I miss the ink on the fingers from the EC rocker and it
Listen,
was a better time back
I
then.
got 8 tracks over here, man. I got 8 tracks.
Well, I've got some boxes here in the apartment I still got to go through, but I was looking for the Ride cassette just before we connect. I was going to flash it, but it's here somewhere. I still have cassettes and still buy cassettes. I have a friend of mine in Australia has a band. He just put out a cassette. I'm like, we gotta mail me your cassette, man.
Yeah, cassettes are kind of happening again, right?
Well, I like the effort in the actual tangible product. I always
Sure.
have. Like, if you're gonna go through the effort to make
Well,
music,
you can see behind me,
yeah,
I like the tactile aspect of music. I like the whole vinyl cover, all of that. The MP3 thing, I mean, I know that some people they can load up an
right.
iPad or pod or whatever and 55,000 songs or whatever, but to me that's not real. I don't
Yeah.
know. But that's just, old man yelling at a cloud, Tommy going like, it's not a real thing.
Yeah, I know, I know. I mean, it's convenient. I get a lot of promos and stuff sent to me electronically, and I can understand it because if you're a band on a label, or if there's even a label, you're not gonna pay someone to stuff, 300 CDs into an envelope and mail them. You're gonna send an
There's no
MP3.
more street teams.
I haven't seen a street team in fucking 20 years, dude.
Do labels even sign underground bands at all anymore? I mean, it's all Taylor Swift and like big stuff, right? I mean, nobody's doing. I mean, that those early '90s, mid '90s, like throw shit at the wall and see if it sticks. That's done, right?
Yeah, yeah. Because the labels don't want to, there's no sense in gambling anymore, because you can have the coolest, greatest indie band in the world on a label. They're not going to sell a lot of records. I mean,
Yeah,
you're always, the music industry is always going to have those half dozen or so artists that always sell tons of records. You're always going to have Lady Gaga's or Taylor Swift's. You're always going to have those. But we're talking half a dozen or so artists. How many tens of thousands of bands are there out there? Um, but I don't know anybody right now currently um at like a mid-level tour level, like playing like, decent sized sheds, let's say like the 3 to 4 thousand seaters, who are really doing super well right now
yeah,
financially, because they got to pay for the buses, and they're super expensive. That's why you're seeing bands doing meet and greets and stuff on the road, because that helps. That's an extra couple $100 in your gas tank between gigs, but I think the days of, here's $250,000, go do a video. I think that's done. I think that's been done for at least 20 years now, if not longer. I started working for a music magazine when I got out of college. Remember CD World down in
yeah,
Jersey?
yep.
I used to do their liner notes magazine. That was my first gig out of college, that free magazine they had at the stores. Perfect example. Labels would promote the stores, and like they promote the bands, and they'd put interviews in front of us to promote records, and they'd send CDs and full printed press kits. Remember actual press kits that you opened? You know,
I
all
got
that
I got
stuff.
a stack of them. I save
I,
all that. I save all that shit, man.
I got them in totes behind me from back in the day, like Motley Crue press kits, and all like big acts,
Yeah,
Christina Aguilera when she first started out, and you'd get, there was money in that stuff. Problem is too, a lot of those acts who were making it at that point in time, all those cool press kits and folders and color photos, who's paying for that? They are, you know.
yeah.
I had a lady on my show last year, Tracy Bonham, had a big radio hit about 30 years ago. I think she still owes her label like 800 grand or something crazy like that. She mentions it in the video. Um,
That's wild.
so it was shitty back then. So compare, like, look at it, what it is now in 2025. In a way, it's kind of cool, because if you're doing music now, you're doing it for the right reason, I think,
Yeah.
because you're not going to be a millionaire, especially if you're
Don't
playing
I
with,
know it?
yeah, and you do it because it's what you do. So I'm psyched about the stuff happening now, because it's more artist driven. Because no one's doing this because, oh, we're gonna sell 10 million records. No, you're not.
No.
You're not ever. So you might as well make the records you want to make, and not have the A&R guys say we need to add a hit here, or the record bean counter saying, well, the last record didn't sell very well, so we're gonna cut your advance by 50% for the next record or whatever. You're not doing with that anymore. You're just doing with the music. So it's kind of like the artist won in a way. If they're willing to understand that this is not going to be what they're going to retire on in most cases. You do.
But are we missing out on some stuff that maybe, you know, we don't know about because they're not throwing shit at the wall to see if it sticks. You know what I mean? Like maybe there's that, maybe there's another new Nirvana or whatever out there that we don't know about and we'll never know about because the labels aren't aren't taking that gamble. You know?
Yeah, I think the chances are very high of that. I'm sure as we're talking, there's a band in Boise, who could be the next Soundgarden.
Yeah.
But, Soundgarden had a foundation set for them. I mean, the one positive is there's so much music now, which can be challenging. I mean, I get 100 records sent to me a week for this and my website. I mean, there's so
Right.
much music happening, which is great. But everybody's kind of working at the same level, It's like nobody's kind of moving up because there's a certain cap now to what you can do as a band, I find. I mean, there's always going to be outliers, bands who do it for a career, but unless you're playing arenas, man, unless you're making those Misfits dollars right now,
Golly. Whoever saw that coming?
good for them. God bless
Oh,
them.
no doubt, man. But
You know,
that's crazy.
to do it at this stage of their lives, I mean, their kids are going to be set now, and they're from my backyard. I grew up down the street from those guys. I used to go jam with them when I was 17 back in high school. You know, I've known those guys for years. So to see them do this now, fuck. But how many other bands are doing that from the Jersey scene? None. So you always have those one or two, and you've got everybody else. But to make it a positive thing, it's freeing at the same time. It's like you're not going to make a living out of this. I gave up that ghost years ago. I can
Sure.
make the music I want now without any pressure,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. That's like how I've been rolling, like, you know, Solace has been a band since '96, but like I said, we only have a few full-length albums out because it hasn't been something that's been like, you have to do this, you have to do this. Like I said, I raised a couple kids, we've all kind of did life,
Mhm.
just regular life in between playing music. Playing music is important and stuff, but it doesn't pay the bills. We all have to go to work and, you know, schlep for that dollar.
Yeah. It seems that the guys from the hardcore genre going back, the ones who are doing it and doing it as a life, as a career, are the older guys, agnostic front tours a million days out of the year. They're making it work, but that's a
They've
45-year
been
old
doing it for
man.
so long. They've been doing it, you know, they're like the band that's like kind of paved that way. Like they are out there doing it. They never stopped,
Mm,
you know.
yeah.
They
So it's bands
paved
like
that way.
that and the Misfits, like, but a new band coming out, reaching that kind of legendary status. I
Yeah,
don't
I
see,
don't.
I don't see it.
Yeah,
There's a lot of great bands out there, but it's all about the old stuff still.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know? Um, but what's important is people continue making the music that they believe in, regardless of what the financial rewards may be. And just, please themselves. And I think if you do honest work, you're going to find an audience. A buddy of mine always says, if you're willing to jump off the ledge, someone's going to catch you. Someone's going to understand why you're doing what you're doing.
right.
And if you're putting things out that you believe in, you're going to find the right people. Now, that amount of right people might only be 40 at a show,
Yeah,
you
sure.
know? But you're going to find the right people.
Yeah,
And I don't know. I'd much rather have things mean more to fewer people, you know what I mean, than appeal to the masses and be totally disposable.
yeah,
Where you just become sales on a spreadsheet, nothing else.
yeah.
I'd hate that. If I was playing arenas with that kind of environment, I'd rather play the Brighton Bar, you know.
Let's open the Brighton Bar back up.
Yes, yes, let's rebuild that fucking place. It needs to happen, man.
It's just a grass lot. There's nothing there. They haven't even built anything new on it. It's just a grass lot.
Are you still living down in Jersey?
No, no, I'm in the Philadelphia area.
Hmm.
I've been here for I don't even know, 20 years now.
Okay,
But I get to Jersey. I mean, my mom still lives in Ocean County. I still get there once in a while.
cool, cool. Yeah, it's quiet in Jersey. I go down there every few months to visit friends, and there's no venues.
Well,
You know,
we were playing that place in South Belmore, which I guess is now Lake Como, called Salty's. And
right. I think they're done now
they
too.
just closed too. We had played a couple really cool shows there. Um, and now they're gone. So, I mean, I don't know any place there. I mean, other than like the new Asbury Lanes, which I refuse to participate in.
Hmm. I've never been. I've heard a lot about it. I've never been there.
Well, we got married at the old lanes.
Mhm.
I mean, you know, the old Asbury Lanes back in the day was just a shithole. It was a dive. And then, some people kind of took it over and started making it hip and cool, which was awesome. And then they had a run of killer shows for quite a while. And then I guess they got bought out and
Yeah.
I don't know. Just I don't know. When I go to Asbury Park now, it's just not the same. And I'm sure the people that live there will probably, tell me different. But for me, when I go there, it just doesn't have the same vibe.
Yeah, it's Jersey's funny, man. It's like I'm visiting a different state now when I go, you know, every few months.
Yeah.
There's Dingbats in Clifton. That place is really the only place I can think of where shows happen, like decent shows, like shows you'd want to go to.
Right.
But it wasn't like that
Stanhope
back.
House?
What's that?
Stanhope is Stanhope House still doing stuff?
I'm not 100% sure of this, and maybe someone watching us in the comments can tell us when I post this. I think they're either done or they're like pay to play now,
Oh
I
boy.
heard. So, although I'm not, 100% sure on that, but I think they're done. I haven't seen any announcements from anybody playing there in a good year or more,
Yeah.
because I still have a lot of friends down there who would play there. Like if they had a gig, it would be at the Stanhope House, and I haven't seen anything. It's always Dingbats now in Clifton. And then that Salty's Place was doing shows. I was going to actually drive down from New Hampshire, where I live now, to see AOD. And then that place folded up like a few weeks before that gig. So
Yeah.
I don't know. It's weird, man, because that's a youth driven thing. And I look back at what I was doing at my stepson's age. I was playing clubs every night. I was getting drunk at the Brighton at watching Nashville Pussy.
Yeah.
Waking up on somebody's roof the next day. Sorry, mom and dad, if you're watching. But
I was waking up on the roof of the Brighton.
perfect. But my stepson, his generation, early 20s, they don't ever leave the house, man. It's all this.
It's all computer, it's games, it's phones. I mean, I've got young kids. I've got a 26-year-old and a 24-year-old. They don't go to keggers in the woods. They don't do the things that we did. It's a totally, which is fine. I'm actually kind of glad they don't do the things that we were doing when we were kids, but it's a totally different, you know, they're not going to rock and roll clubs until 3, 4 in the morning and
Right.
not getting up for work the next morning.
You go to work, stamps all over your hand, fucking wristbands.
Yeah, they're actually they seem to be more responsible.
Mm, what a shame.
Yeah, I know, right? Didn't you learn anything from us?
But they've got their thing, and that's cool. It's just different. Like when I was 16, 17, I couldn't wait to get a car and go to the pipeline on Thursday night. I
Sure.
couldn't wait to do that. I
Yeah,
know.
you wanted to go see Underdog, dude. You wanted to go see the
Right.
Wretched Ones.
Yes. Yes, and I saw the retro ones many times at the Pipeline. God, those
That was
Friday
kind
nights
of
were
that was
cool.
kind of their home turf, right? That was their club, right?
Yeah, that was very much mine too. The bands I was in, when I was doing like punk and oi and stuff, we were Pipeline bands for sure.
Yeah, Niblick Headman and
Yep,
Headmoon.
yep.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, that whole scene. I was in Broken Heroes back then, so we were playing shows with all those guys at the Pipeline, and it's pretty much the Pipeline. I used to always joke around that there should be a T-shirt for whatever band we were in, like so and so band world tour, and the back it just says the
The
Pipeline.
pipeline.
But that's it, man. I wanted to get a car to get the hell out of the house. These, younger people today, that's not a thing for them. It's barely an incentive to get a car, because they don't have to go to the mall or the record store. They can do it all here.
Yeah, shop online.
Yeah, it's weird, man. I don't know. I kind of wish people of that age group would bleed a little more, you know, would go out to some dangerous place they shouldn't be and go do something that they would never admit they ever did to their, in front of their parents and do that for years and have a great
I'm
time.
sure it's happening somewhere that us
Mm.
old geezers don't know anything about. I'm sure there's some kids out there doing it.
I hope, I hope. I mean, I remember when I was still a kid. I was maybe 19, driving out to Seabees to play and no place to park. And I parked in like some like really shady street somewhere close to it. The dog chained up, snarling at me. You've got the crackhead. You know what I mean? And I'm like, I get to play a show tonight. It was fantastic. I could have been killed, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm a hayseed white boy from Sussex County, New Jersey, and that part of town. And then even when I got older and got a little wiser, I'd be like, I'm just gonna park outside the Lincoln Tunnel and take a cab there. Fuck it. I'm not gonna deal with it. Cab drivers would like stop 4 blocks away and go, "Good luck," and they'd like push me out of the car. I get the But it's a different age now. But I miss that time, and I would definitely include Godspeed into that era for me. That was a lot of fun discovering that music at that time. As I said a few times already, still listen to that album, still love it, still respect what you guys did. And it's a thrill for me 30 years later to sit here and have this conversation with you about that era and represent it on this channel, man. So
Awesome.
yeah, can't thank you enough for coming on. I wish you well with Solace. Where's the best place for me to direct people to check you guys out online and get information on what you're doing?
We have a Facebook page. I mean, I'm not in control of it. But yeah, I mean, Solace on Facebook. I mean, there are a bunch of different Solaces that we've tried to like squash, but yeah, Solace, we're, from New Jersey, even though I don't live there anymore, but uh that's probably the best place. We have an Instagram page. I think it is actually Solace_NJ, maybe. I don't know. I should have taken notes.
I'll look it up. I'll find it and I'll include it in the video description.
Sweet, sweet.
And anybody who hasn't listened to Tommy's stuff in a while, who remember the Godspeed days, check out what Solace has been up to. There's new music from what you said, so anybody watching this, definitely check out those sites. I'll put in the description. Keep tabs on what these guys are doing, and it's great to know you're still out there doing it, man. And I hope our paths do cross in person someday.
Hey, anytime, man. Just, hopefully see you out there.
Absolutely, man. Thanks again for coming on.
No, thank you, man. Cheers.